Next, I want to show you the concatenation function. The newest version of Excel has two new functions, concat and textjoin. Prior to that, the legacy function was concatenate. We only had one formula to work through, and there was some challenges with some workaround. I'm going to show you all three ways on how to use this. That way, if you have the new version of Excel or the old version of Excel, you're able to work through it. So the first one, or the first two, concat and textjoin, that only works or is only available in the Excel 2016 or newer version of Excel. Maybe you have Office 365. The other, concatenate, works on all versions of Excel. In the future, they may phase it out. So let's start tying all this together. We're going to use that function to create our unique customer ID. So back to our worksheet here, column J. Let's go ahead and delete that for now. Let's create our unique customer ID. So if I look at this worksheet here, the unique values of this file include the email address and the social security number. Email address is hidden right now. Email address is probably too long to create a unique user ID, and you may run into some duplications. Let me show you what I mean by that. Let me unhide that email address. Let's just look at this first value. If we create a customer ID using the email address, we'd probably only use the first part of that email address. However, there may be a user at a future date with the same email address but a different domain, for example, at Hotmail, at Yahoo, at Gmail. So that wouldn't work. Let's use this social security number. However, that's very private information. We don't want to use somebody's social security number to create a customer ID. However, we can use a combination of that social security number with another piece of information or part of that social security number. In this case, I think we can probably use the last 4 digits of the social security number for that customer, and then maybe the state. I think what we're going to do is we're going to add the state as the leading characters, and then the last 4 characters of that SSN. Let me hide this column C again, email, just so we can start working here. The formula that I'm going to create, you can create as one long formula. In this case, I'm going to create 2 formulas so you can see how all this works together. In cell J2, I'm going to select equals, and then I'm going to say return back the last 4 characters of that SSN. So that formula is right. And then cell A2, comma, how many characters? 4, shift 0, enter. So now we have the last 4 characters of that SSN. Column K is where we're going to create this user ID or customer ID. So we want to join cell I and J. And let me show you how to do this the 3 different ways. So first, I'm going to show you concatenate, which is the, I guess, a legacy formula. So let's enter equals, and let's just start typing concatenate. You're going to see 2 formulas there. The first one is the newest one. The second one is the older one. If you notice, it's a little bit hard to see, but there is an exclamation mark next to that little FX formula. That just means that, it's an outdated formula. It may not work with some versions of Excel. The older version says join several text strings into one text string. Let's go ahead and select tab on our keyboard to accept that. And it's saying, what cells do you want to join? So the first cell I want to join is cell I2, which is the state. Then comma. And then I want to add a hyphen. And after the hyphen, I want to add the last 4 of the SSN. So in order to add the hyphen, I'm going to enter open quotes. So that's shift and then that open quotes next to your enter key. Then I'm going to enter a hyphen and then close quotes, then comma, and then it's saying what is the next text string you want to join together. Well, that's column J. So cell J2, and then shift 0 and enter. Now, if you notice, I've joined these two cells, and this is my unique customer ID. This is one way to do it. Maybe you didn't want that hyphen in the middle. So if you go back to your formula bar, we can delete that open quote and the hyphen and just say join cell I2 and J2 and enter. Column L, I'm going to add a formula there so you can see what this formula looks like, so we're not having to point to this formula bar every time. So I'm going to hit equals, and the formula here is called return the formula as a string. It's called formula text. So I'm going to select tab to accept, and then K2, and then shift 0 enters, and there you have it. Let me squeeze some of this so you can see what this is starting to look like. Again, this is just for visual purposes, so you can see that formula as I'm creating it. Nothing to do with what we're trying to create here. So again, back to column K. This was using the concatenate formula. So that's the concatenation formula. Now let me show you the concat formula. So I'm going to select cell K2. I'm going to hit equals concat. I'm going to select tab to accept that formula. And now it's saying what text strings do you want to join. Earlier with concatenation, we had to select each cell one by one, and then enter comma, and then select the next cell. In this case, you can select a range of cells. So let's select I2 through J2, which is that state, and then the last 4 of the social security number. So go ahead and highlight those, and then close parentheses, shift 0 and enter. And if you notice, it gives us the same result as the concatenation formula, and we did not have to enter commas in between. Let me show you how that works with 3 text strings. So back to K2, concat to accept it, and let's select the city, state, and last 4 of this SSN, shift 0, enter, and let me just autofill that formula all the way down and expand column K. And if you notice, it created a concatenation for us. Let me show you how the other formula works, which is text join. So back to column K, our customer ID that we're trying to create. Let's enter a formula again, so equals, and let's start typing text, and then J. And you'll notice the first formula there, text join, it says concatenates a list or range of text strings using a delimiter. So if you remember earlier, we joined the state and last 4 of the SSN, and we added a hyphen in between. Say we wanted to join the city, state, and last 4. Let me show you how this works. So it's saying select your delimiter. Delimiter, let's say it's a hyphen, so let's do open quotes, hyphen, closed quotes, comma. Now it's asking you, do you want to ignore empty cells? In this case, yes, there's no empty cells, but if there's an empty cell, I do want it to ignore it. So I'm going to select tab to accept it, comma. Now it's saying, what are the text strings you want to join? Well, let's do the same thing, city, state, and the last 4 of the SSN, and let's just select that range, shift 0 to close parentheses, enter, and we're going to double click that formula. And if you notice, it added the delimiter for us. We only had to enter it once at the beginning of that formula, which is here, and it added it in between every text string. The old way of doing this using concatenation, let me show you what that looks like. Concatenate, we would have to go city, comma, then open parentheses, add our delimiter, comma, next text string, comma, open parentheses, delimiter, comma, and then last piece of text string, then shift 0 to close the formula. And if you notice, same result here and here. However, our formulas are different. Concatenate a lot longer if you have a lot of text strings you're trying to join and a lot of delimiters. With the new formula, text join, you only have to add that delimiter once. So back to our customer ID. Let's go ahead and create that. Let's use concatenate. It's only two text strings we're trying to join, so not a big deal. We're going to select state, comma, open quotes, delimiter, which is our hyphen, close quotes, comma, and then the last four of the SSN, close parentheses, and we have our customer ID. So let's go ahead and double click that to flash fill. Let's get rid of column L. We don't need that anymore. Also, column B, I forgot we hadn't gotten rid of this. This column B, this was with our last name, comma, first name. We don't need that anymore because we already broke it down here in column F and G. So column B, let's hit Control minus to get rid of that. And then before we get rid of column I, which is the last four of that SSN, we need to break this formula here, copy paste as values. Let's go ahead and select column J, and then on your keyboard, Control C, Control Alt V for Victor, then V again for Victor, enter. It broke the formula. Now column I, we can go ahead and delete that, and now we have our unique customer ID. Before we move on, I want to make sure that unique customer ID is unique to one customer. If you remember earlier, we looked at our entire data sheet and we removed any duplicates. Well, that duplicate was based on the entire content of that row. In this case, we want to make sure that this customer ID is unique and is not duplicated here. So a quick way to check that is highlight column I, then go into home on your ribbon, conditional formatting, and you're going to get a couple drop downs here. You're going to select the first one, highlight cell rules, and you're going to go to the right of that menu and you're going to scroll all the way down, duplicate values. So it's saying highlight any instance or highlight any cell where there's a duplicate record that already exists, and fill it with light red and then dark red text and select OK. So if you notice here, the unique customer ID that we created is probably not going to work because there's somebody in, let's say, this state here with the same last four as somebody else. A good way to check this is sorting column I. That way the customer IDs are all grouped together from A to Z. So let's go ahead and do that. Back to row 1. We're going to undo our filter, Control Shift L, and then Control Shift L again. Let's sort the entire content by column I, A to Z. And now all our duplicate values should be together. What do we notice here? We do notice that there are some duplicated records here again. Let me see if I can expand this. And I thought we had gotten rid of duplicate records, and I think I realized why earlier when I thought we got rid of our duplicate records, we actually didn't. And the reason for that is we said look at the entire row, and if this entire row matches another row, go ahead and remove its contents. It didn't do that because now, as I'm noticing here, there was a difference in this gender column. This customer was here with an M, and then he was here again with the gender completely spelled out. So I'm glad we did a quick check here. All this tells me is that there are duplicate records, but it wasn't caught because this column C was not all formatted the same. So what we want to do is, it looks like male in some instances is just M, and it's probably the case for female. So let's scroll to the top of this. Let's select this drop down. Let's see how many options. Okay, so it looks like there's a couple different options. So what we're going to do is we're going to say anytime the cell says female, let's just convert it to F for female and same for male. Quick way to do that is select column C, Control H is going to bring up this dialog box, find then replace. Find what? We want to find any cell that says female, and we want to replace it with an F. And instead of replace, we're going to say replace all. And let's say we're all done. We found 500 and some replacements. Okay, let's do the same for male. Male, let's go and replace all. It says it's done. So what we want to do again is we want to check for duplicates. So let's go ahead and select that gray triangle, go to data and remove duplicates, and let's just say okay. It looks like it found another 16 duplicates. So let's just hit OK, and then we want to check our customer ID, make sure there are no duplicates again. So this has 1,000 records. I don't have time to scroll through this, especially if this is hundreds of thousands of rows. I'm going to go to the top in my filter, my customer ID filter. I'm going to select this drop down arrow, and I'm going to say filter the content by color. So when I hover over filter by color, I'm going to go to this option here, which will show me all my duplicate values. And if we notice here, there's a couple values that are flagged as duplicates. So let's look at the first two records. So what this is saying is that there's two individuals with the same customer ID. However, when I look at the record, it is not the same individual. It's a different email address, a completely different SSN, completely different first name, last name. So all that tells me is that this customer ID is not going to work. So we're going to have to alter this either to add additional unique criteria or some other way. Let's clear this filter. Let's go back into this customer ID column, and let's add another criteria to this. Maybe let's do the first letter of the last name and the first letter of the first name. Column J, let's go ahead and enter a formula, which is left. Select cell E2 and 1. So that's going to bring me back that first letter of the last name. And let's do the same column K, but let's do it for the first name. So let's do left, first name. Let's bring back that first character, close parentheses. So now we have the first letter of the last name, the first letter of the first name. Let's flash fill that all the way down, and let's incorporate that into our existing customer ID. So this is actually a good way to use one of the formulas we just used. So for now, let's use concat, and let's just select cell or the contents in I, J, and K. Shift 0 to close parentheses, enter, and let me reduce column B so you can see what this formula looks like. And let me double click to flash fill that all the way down. And now we have another customer ID here that's a little bit more unique. So let's check to make sure this is a unique customer ID. Let's go to home, conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, duplicate values, and let's just leave the default and hit OK. Then with the filter, let's select this drop down arrow, and if we hover over the filter by color, it's not even available. That tells me that these are unique values and there are no duplicates. Let's get rid of this formula in the formula bar in column L. Let's just Control C, Control Alt V to get our dialog box, and then V for Victor again, enter. So now we have our unique customer ID. Let's take this header, cut it, paste it here, and we don't need columns I, J, or K. Let's on our keyboard Control minus to get rid of that. And now we have good clean data. We've cleaned up the city, the state, last name, first name, and actually column D here. We don't need this anymore. We already split out that information. So let's do Control minus to get rid of that column. Let's just expand that. If you haven't already, go ahead and save that Control S on your keyboard. And the last thing we want to do is we're going to do a quick pivot table to just identify where which states have the majority of our customer base. Again, this is not a pivot table class, but in every course I do, I'm going to slowly start introducing you to pivot tables and the many uses, and that way by the time we get around to the pivot table course, you already have a basic understanding and we don't have to spend too much time on the basics and fundamentals. If you have a couple minutes, I'd highly recommend watch some of my other content, setting up your quick access toolbar. You're going to need that if you're going to watch some of my other videos. These are the most frequently used tools, so I have them up here. Also watch my other videos on creating basic dashboards, and another one that I'm going to put out on pivot tables, and then another one on VLOOKUPs.